Ridge swims desperately toward Brooke, who has been dumped into the Mediterranean and is floating disturbingly still. Nick is sleeping well on his boat. Ridge snatches the unconscious Brooke and carries her over to another watercraft, where a man assists him in pulling her out of the sea. Donna and Katie at the Forrester mansion are terrified that Nick would propose to them. The blonde suddenly realizes that something awful could happen to their sister. They see Brooke hasn't been blogging and hope she's okay. Back in Italy, all of the viewers who predicted Ridge would give Brooke CPR prove true as he covers her mouth with his own and then pumps on her chest, pleading, "Come on." Brooke believes she sees the light. Then she walks along the shore toward Ridge, who is clothed entirely in white, and wraps her arms around him. Back in reality, she coughs up some seawater and awakens to see her ex looking down at her. Naturally, Ridge kisses her. Katie and Donna gush about Ridge and Brooke's love for the umpteenth time at the Forrester mansion, while Ridge resolves never to take Brooke for granted again across the world. "I'll make it right," he says. "We'll make this right." Will Grace manage to keep her secret? Hope and Liam appear to have nothing else to talk about at Bill's house as they remind him about his life-threatening brain tumor for the gazillionth time. Liam expresses gratitude to Dr. Buckingham for giving him a new perspective on life. He wonders how he will ever compensate her for mending the impossible. Finn is berating Grace in her office right now for lying to Liam about having brain cancer, so she could charge $1 million for bogus experimental surgery. Finn states the obvious. He is shocked. He encourages his colleague to consider the pain he has caused Liam and his loved ones. Grace shrugs, admitting that he did suffer a brain bleed before explaining that she was desperate. Finn demands to hear the entire tale. Grace informs Finn that this is all due to Reese and his gambling debts. She describes how bookies were pursuing her and her daughters. She gave them some of the money but didn't know where to acquire the rest. After determining Liam was a Spencer, she gave him medication that caused his troublesome symptoms. Her goal was to make him to agree to the treatment. Finn massages his head as she moans that the Luna shooting derailed her plans, but after Finn saved Liam, she went for it. Grace begs Finnegan to understand. At Bill's, Hope and Liam discuss Reese Buckingham's theft of their daughter, and the tragic circumstances underlying the painful lie. They're relieved he's behind jail. Liam, who has no idea what is going on across town, declares Grace to be an angel. Hope agrees. She is a saint. Back at the hospital, Finn scolds Grace for lying and conning Liam. She has brought sorrow and emotional pain. Grace tries, but Liam is fine. Finn cannot believe she would do this after what her ex-husband did to Liam and Hope. She sold her integrity for $1 million. After Finn acknowledges he hasn't told anybody about his concerns yet, Grace wheedles, "We can handle this, the two of us." He couldn't believe she's asking him to keep her secret. Grace had no choice but to fight for her daughters. "I'm begging you, Finn." "Excuse me." The bold and the beautiful recap for Wednesday, August 6th, finds Ridge Forrester doing CPR and kissing Brooke Logan before promising to make things right. Ridge was responsible for swimming to the unconscious Brooke in the water when Nick Marone lost consciousness due to a mishap on his boat. Ridge was able to move Brooke over to a different vessel and obtain some assistance getting her on board. Brooke wasn't breathing at this time, so Ridge started chest compressions and tried to breathe life back into her lungs. Meanwhile, Brooke saw a dazzling light and pictured herself on the beach with Ridge. Ridge kissed Brooke passionately after she sputtered out the water and returned to him. Ridge also swore to never take Brooke for granted again, and that they would make things right. While Donna Logan Forrester and Katie Logan were discussing Brooke and the potential of Nick proposing, they became concerned about Brooke's lack of social media posts and hoped everything was fine. At the Spencer estate, Liam Spencer continued to explain to Hope Logan the distinction between nasty Reese Buckingham and Grace Buckingham, who was an angel. Grace told Finn at the hospital on Wednesday's BNB episode that Liam actually had a brain bleed, which gave her the opportunity to fake his tumor. This included giving Liam medications that would cause his symptoms and lead him to the bogus miracle therapy. Grace discussed understanding that Bill Spencer was Liam's father, and convincing him to undergo the experimental surgery following all of the Luna Nozawa turmoil. Although Grace exaggerated her sob tale about the bookies who were threatening her and her girls, Finn was furious at the anguish her deception had caused. Grace also lied to Finn, which made him even more unhappy about the situation. Finn yelled about the $1 million and how Grace had compromised her integrity. However, Grace insisted that Liam was well, and hoped Finn would agree to keep the news between them. Finn objected to Grace asking him to cover for her, but she begged for his silence and urged him to forgive her for what she had done. According to the bold and the beautiful teasers, Finn will make a decision on the matter soon. Grace stood in a dimly lighted corner of the Forrester estate, trembling as she gripped Finn's arm. The air was thick with anxiety, and every whispered word felt like a yell. She looked over her shoulder to make sure no one else was there, then darted her gaze to the grand staircase, where shadows danced beneath the warm illumination of the chandelier. The distant murmur of voices from the living room, where the Forrester family was assembled, fueled her desperation. "Finn, please," she said quietly, her voice cracking. "You cannot tell anyone. Not Steffi, Taylor, or even Rich. If this gets out, everything will be destroyed." Finn's brow wrinkled, his steady gaze fixed on hers. As a doctor, he was accustomed to preserving secrets, but this was not a patient's chart or a private diagnostic. This was something much darker, capable of tearing apart the frail web of trust that held their extended family together. He crossed his arms and leaned gently against the oak-paneled wall, his jaw set. "Grace, you're asking me to lie to my wife," he stated quietly but firmly. "To Steffi. You know how that could affect us. Why should I keep this quiet? Give me a good cause." Grace's breath tightened. She hadn't expected Finn to push back so fiercely, especially because she saw him as the only person who could understand. Her thoughts raced, revisiting the events that had led up to this point. Her rash decision, the late-night meeting, and the documents she had signed without fully understanding. She'd been frantic then too, trying to shield her daughter, Serena, from a scandal that could jeopardize her promising job at Forrester Creations. However, the ramifications of her actions loomed larger than she had ever imagined. "It's not just about me," Grace explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "It is about Serena. If this is revealed, she will lose her reputation and future prospects. You understand how competitive this industry is. You have seen what the press does to people. They'll tear her apart." Finn's demeanor relaxed slightly, but his gaze remained watchful. He understood the power of secrets, how they could fester and poison relationships. He'd witnessed it in his own marriage, when Steffi's confidence had been tested by lies in the past. But Grace's plea struck a deeper chord, a sense of commitment to family, however difficult. Serena was young, ambitious, and living in a world that did not accept mistakes. He could understand why Grace was afraid. "I get that you're trying to protect her," Finn murmured, running his hand through his hair. "What you're asking is more than just keeping quiet. It's about hiding anything illicit. Do you know that?" Grace flinched when the word illegal landed like a slap. She tried to convince herself that it wasn't all that horrible, that she'd only broken the rules to protect her kid. But Finn's bluntness compelled her to face the truth. She had fabricated paperwork and transferred funds from Forrester Creations' charity section to pay Serena's debt. It was meant to be a temporary solution until Serena could get back on her feet. However, the figures did not add up, and an audit was imminent. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," Grace said, her eyes welling up with tears. "I figured I could fix it before anyone noticed. The audit could have a negative impact on more than just Serena. It will bring the entire organization down. Rich, Eric, and everyone will be implicated." Finn's jaw tightened again. He didn't appreciate being backed into a corner, but Grace's comments were powerful. Forrester Creations was not just a business. It was a heritage. A controversy like this may harm the brand, cost employment, and fracture the family. He considered Steffi, her unwavering commitment to the organization, and how she would respond if she realized what Grace had done. The betrayal would pierce deep. "I need time to think," Finn finally stated, his voice firm but strained. "I am not promising anything, Grace, but I'm not going to say anything yet. Not until I figure out what is right." Grace nodded, relief washing over her even as guilt gnawed at her insides. She knew she was asking too much, but she didn't have any other options. As Finn started to go, she gripped his hand for the last time. "Thank you," she muttered. "I swear I'll make things right. Just give me a chance." Finn did not answer, instead gently drawing his hand away and strolling back into the living room. Grace watched him leave, her heart hammering. She had bought herself time, but at what cost? Across town, in the calm of Brooke Logan's apartment, the mood was very different. The soothing glow of candles threw comforting shadows on the walls. Brooke sat on the edge of her cream-colored sofa, her hands securely clasped in her lap. She had not expected Ridge to show up tonight, especially after their previous dispute. But there he was, standing by the window, his silhouette set against the Los Angeles cityscape. "Brooke," Ridge said, turning to face her. His voice was gentler than she'd heard in weeks, free of the frustration that had characterized their previous conversations. "I've been thinking of us. About everything we've gone through." Brooke's heart skipped a beat, but her countenance remained reserved. She'd heard variants of this speech before, Ridge's pledges, his declarations of love, only to have them fall apart when things became hard. She had always loved him, but she had become bored of the cycle. The back and forth, the heartache, the hope that always seemed to fail. "What's the difference this time, Ridge?" she asked, her voice calm yet vulnerable. "We have been here before. You say you want us, but something draws you away. Taylor, the kids, and the company, there's always something." Ridge crossed the room in 3 steps and sat next to her on the sofa. He grabbed for her hand, feeling warm and familiar. "You're right," he whispered, his gaze catching hers. "I have allowed things to come between us. But I am done with that. I'm done running from what I know to be true." Brooke's breath caught in her throat. She desperately wanted to believe him, but doubt lingered like a great weight on her chest. "Ridge, I can't keep doing this," she admitted sadly. "I can't keep hoping you'll choose me, only to end up alone again." Ridge's grip on her fingers tightened, his look angry and determined. "I am not asking you to hope, Brooke. I'm informing you that I'm here. For good. I've spent far too long attempting to appease others and remedy problems that aren't my responsibility. But you are my home. You've always been." The words hit Brooke like a tidal wave, destroying the barriers she placed around her emotions. She'd spent years battling for Ridge, against a world that seemed intent on keeping them apart. But now, with his hand in hers and his gaze fixed on her, she felt something shift. This time there were more than just words. Ridge, raw and unguarded, gave her the one thing she'd always desired, his entire heart. "I want to believe you," she said softly, her voice shaking. "But I'm scared." Ridge leaned forward, placing his forehead against hers. "I know," he replied. "And I plan to spend every day proving it. No more half measures and no more looking back. Just us." Brooke closed her eyes and let his words soak in. For the first time in a long time, she sensed a spark of hope, not the desperate type that had previously scorched her, but something stronger, more substantial. She leaned into him, her lips brushing his in a cautious kiss that quickly deepened, reigniting the spark that had always existed between them. Ridge smiled as they parted, a rare, unguarded smile that made Brooke's heart hurt with truth. "We're going to make this work," he stated. "I'm not letting you go again." Brooke nodded, tears welling in the corners of her eyes. "Okay," she replied softly. "Let's do this." Back at the Forrester estate, Finn returned to the living room, his thoughts still reeling from the chat with Grace. Steffi noticed him right away, her acute eyes sensing the strain in his posture. She excused herself from a chat with Eric and crossed the room to him, her heels quietly clicking on the hardwood flooring. "Are you okay?" she inquired, her voice low enough that only he could hear. "You look like you just saw a ghost." Finn attempted a smile, but it did not reach his eyes. "Just a lot on my mind," he muttered, peering around to ensure no one was listening. "Work stuff." Steffi raised an eyebrow, dubious but did not press. She knew Finn well enough to recognize when he was holding back, but she also trusted him to let her know when he was ready. "All right," she murmured, sliding her arm through his. "But you know you can speak with me, right?" "I know," Finn replied, his voice softening. He squeezed her hand, grateful for her presence, even though the weight of Grace's secret weighed heavily on him. He wasn't sure how long he could keep it or how much it would cost. But for the time being, he put it to the back of his mind and concentrated on the warmth of Steffi's touch. As the evening progressed, the Forrester family continued to gather, ignorant to the secrets seething beneath the surface. Grace stayed on the fringes, her gaze occasionally flicking to Finn, a wordless request for his silence. Across town, Brooke and Ridge were entwined in each other's arms, the promise of a fresh start dangling between them like a slender thread. But in a world based on passion and power, secrets seldom remained hidden for long. Grace's actions, Finn's silence, and Brooke and Ridge's fragile trust were all on collision course, with the potential to shake the foundations of everything they valued. For the time being, however, the night went on, with each of them preoccupied with their own battles, hopes, and frantic attempts to cling on to what was most important. The days that followed were a delicate balance of avoidance and pretense. Grace immersed herself into her work at Forrester Creations, seeking to hide her guilt behind spreadsheets and design sessions. She avoided Finn as much as possible, knowing that every glance could expose her dread. But the audit approached, and with it, the unavoidable moment when her secret would be revealed. Finn, meantime, struggled with his conscience. He had promised Steffi honesty after everything they had gone through, and now he was withholding something from her that could harm the entire family. He spent sleepless nights repeating Grace's remarks, considering the implications of speaking up versus remaining silent. Every time he watched Serena smiling with colleagues or sketching new concepts, he felt the weight of Grace's request. Could he truly damage her future in order to do the right thing? Brooke and Ridge, on the other hand, were enjoying their newfound relationship. They spent their evenings together, chatting about the future, planned excursions, and rediscovering the comfort of being in one another's presence. Despite their euphoria, Brooke couldn't ignore the feeling that something was wrong. Ridge appeared distracted at times, his mind traveling to the company, the family, or something he would not reveal. She attempted to dismiss the doubt, but it persisted like a shadow. Brooke overheard a conversation one afternoon while dropping off some ideas at the Forrester office, which stopped her in her tracks. Two accountants were discussing the approaching audit, their voices low but urgent. "If those numbers don't add up, heads are going to roll," one of them added. "And it's not limited to the charitable section. This could bring down the entire company." Brooke's heart fell. She didn't know all the specifics, but she could smell trouble. She thought of Ridge and how hard he'd fought to repair Forrester Creations following previous scandals. If something went wrong, it might ruin everything. She vowed to confront him, to get to the bottom of things, even if it meant reopening past scars. That evening, as Brooke and Ridge sat down to supper, she brought up the matter cautiously. "I heard something today," she explained, putting down her wine glass. "About the audit. Is there anything going on in the company that I should know about?" Ridge's fork halted in midair, his eyes blazing with something Brooke couldn't quite make out. "It's just routine stuff," he added, sounding too nonchalant. "You understand how these things work. There's nothing to worry about." But Brooke was unconvinced. She leaned across the table to take his hand. "Ridge, if something is wrong, please tell me. We are in this together now, right?" Ridge hesitated and then nodded. "Yeah," he replied softly. "Yes, we are. I will look into it, okay? I promise." Ridge's thoughts were racing even as he spoke. He had heard whispers about inconsistencies in the charity sector, but he dismissed them as clerical errors. With Brooke's query and the accountant's chat, he couldn't rule out the potential of anything bigger. He made a mental note to dig deeper, talk to Eric and Steffi, and ensure the company's safety. As the days moved into weeks, the tension in the Forrester world increased. Grace worked tirelessly to cover her tracks, changing records and requesting favors, all the while knowing it might not be enough. Finn's silence became increasingly difficult to maintain, especially when Steffi began to sense his unease. Brooke, sensing the impending storm, pushed Ridge to face the truth, even as their restored romance gave her hope for a better future. The audit was scheduled to begin in 3 days, testing the delicate balance of secrets and confidence. Grace's frantic plea to Finn, Finn's devotion to Steffi, and Brooke and Ridge's precarious new beginning were all at risk. In the world of Forrester Creations, where love and betrayal were as much a part of the fabric as the creations they made, nothing was guaranteed, but the inevitable revelation of the truth.